Where did I put my... Hi, and welcome back to Create, Share, Inspire podcast. This is episode 507. I was setting up the now and hit the live button by mistake, so we're 15 minutes early, but whoopsie. Hi Lucy, thanks for joining live. If you're joining me live, please say hello. I will wait a few seconds for people to pop over from pre-chat or from getting notifications. Hi Healing Springs and Joe, good evening. Thanks for joining live. So we're a few minutes early because I clicked the wrong button. Hi Erica and Picasso and Jill, Pamela, Karen, Judy. Thanks for joining live, everybody. Hi Val. Hi Lucy. Hi Tammy. Good evening, everybody. Hope everybody's had a great day. Happy Thursday. Somebody reminded me this morning that today is Friday Eve and said, Happy Friday Eve. What a great sentiment. I like that. Jill likes the color I have on. Thank you. I think it's a kind of tealish, but definitely dark blue. Hi, B girl. Hi, Pamela. And I'm wearing earrings from 80 Handmade Gifts, one of my favorite handmade pair of earrings. Hi, Runaway something, Runaway Red. These earrings are crocheted, and they're crocheted with Be So Fine Bling. The pattern calls for #1 fingering weight yarns. You could make them in Be So Fine or Be So Fine Bling, and it's a little motif that you simply thread onto in the chain 3 spaces on the last round. You thread them onto a hoop earring. Super duper easy to make. You could make multiple pairs of them in an afternoon. You can make them in all sorts of different colors. Thanks, B-Girl. I love these earrings. Hi, Migdalia. They're one of my favorite earrings to wear, and these are in Be So Fine Bling, which is my #1 fingering weight yarn that has a thread of pure silver plied right into the yarn. How fancy is that? Hi, Holly, or Holy. Thanks for joining. Yes, they're super lightweight, Tammy. That's one of the reasons why I love crocheting and knitting earrings so much, is because I love big earrings, but the older I get, the more, stretched out my earring holes are, and short of getting surgery to snip it together, which I know I'm not going to do that, I need to wear really light earrings, and the only way to wear really big earrings and really light earrings at the same time is really to put the metal to the minimum and use yarn instead. So using yarn and either stretching it onto a frame of like a hoop like this, or starching them or stiffening them in other ways. There are lots of ways to make yarn stay in place, look big and bold like that look that I love in big earrings, but still be light enough that they don't drag my stretched out earring holes any more than they already are. I know some of you probably have the same issue and know exactly what I'm talking about. Hi Margaret, good evening. Thanks for joining live. And those of you that don't like big earrings, you have lots of other options then. And you could certainly make anything that I make big, you can make us smaller as well. Can I teach you how to starch earrings? Sure, absolutely. So I will be doing quite a few pieces of jewelry in the new book, 50 Crochet Gifts, which is very close to launching the pre-order week 1. And when I do the new earrings in there, I will definitely be showing you how to stiffen them. These obviously don't need stiffening because they're stretched onto a frame, right? They're stretched onto a hoop earring. But the other ones that I will be making for the book are not going to be done in this style, and they will need some stiffening, and I will definitely show you a few different ways to do it. Actually, there's definitely some options when it comes to stiffening jewelry, and I will show you several of them when I do the videos. So I plan on doing videos for each pattern as they're released. So the first week 1 of 52 52 crochet gifts book. Week 1 will have 5 patterns in it, and then each week going forward we'll have 2 patterns released each week. And as I release them, I'll be releasing video tutorials to supplement the patterns each week as well. That's the goal. We'll see how it goes, but that is the goal right now. So the first week we'll have, there's 5 chapters in the book. There's a chapter called head, a chapter called hands, a chapter called neck, a chapter called bags, and a chapter called home. And I thought for the first week I would represent all 5 chapters by releasing a pattern from all 5 chapters. Then going forward every week, 2 new patterns will get released. And if you remember, if you participated in that super fun pre-order launch that we did for Layers Crochet and Layers Knit, each week I uploaded a new PDF and sent out a new link to you, and there were new patterns in the book each week. And then when the book was finally complete, you got the entire book fully packaged together. Yeah, it's going to be so much fun, Joe. Yes, Pamela, it's going to be so much fun. So the first week will come with 5 patterns, and we'll try to release all 5 of those videos in that first week or within that week. And then going forward from there, 2 patterns will be released each week, and they could be from any of the 5 chapters, and there'll be video tutorials released each week with those. And what's great is that because of the podcast every day, anybody who's working on those patterns can ask me questions. We can do extra tutorials during the podcast. We can do things live because of that interaction of you asking a question. Someone could ask a question about one of the pieces that have been released, and I can pull out the sample and show you up close, and we can talk about it. So it's going to be a really, really interactive way of learning projects for a new book. I mean, it's going to be awesome. So I'm excited. I see a lot of you are excited. So wonderful. I am going to talk about something different on the paper tonight. There's always things that let's see, let me move this out of the way. You know, sometimes it's not always practical to teach things without a visual. And so I'm really excited to finally have this board so that I can talk to you about some things. Because just like with the Zen scarves, remember when we did the Zen scarf patterns and we just did some easy stripes, right? Well, I've often talked about the fact that you could take 2 colors of yarn and you can make any sort of a stripe sequence you want. But going a step further than that, there's something really amazing you can do with using 2 different colors of yarn, and that's making your own gradient. And you can do that by changing the number of stripes you do on a project. And it takes a little planning in the beginning. So let's assume that we're going to do it for just a scarf to start with. So let's say you're going to make a scarf. How far down can I draw? Oh, I can draw far and still be on camera. So let's say we're going to make a scarf, right? And let's say you're going to start the scarf here and do rows going back and forth this way and go all the way up to here. Oh, we're going to do this in 2 colors too. It'll certainly make more sense then. Okay, so just because I have a black and a red pen here, we're going to do this in black and red. So what I want to show you is that first, I'm going to design the gradient on here, but then we're going to talk about how you plan it afterwards. So it's going to take me a minute here to draw it. So what we're going to do is have our smallest, let's say black is color A and red is color B. We're going to have our smallest color A stripe on this end of the scarf, and we'll have our smallest color B stripe on this end of the scarf. Let's see, this might be, so that means we're going to have our largest color B stripe on this end of the scarf. This would have been easier to do with grid paper, but we'll see if I wing it properly. If I don't wing it properly, we'll just start over. And so our largest color A stripe would be on this side. Okay, so then we'll do a slightly larger stripe on color B. I probably went too big on those. And a slightly bigger color, or color A, this is color B. Okay, and then, so then we'll do slightly smaller of that one. And slightly smaller of this one. And then slightly bigger of this one. And slightly bigger of this one. Okay, is that even looking like anything? No, it's not. Okay, so we'll start this in a different way then. I wasn't sure. So let's say you did one row of that color here and one row of this color here. And let's say your next color of color A was 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, obviously it would need to be more than that to be a scarf, but so we went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, you would want to do more than 5 rows of each of these. Let's say you went up to 10, like your first stripe of color A would be 1, first stripe of color A would be 2 rows, first stripe of third stripe would be 3 rows, 4 rows, 5 rows, and all the way up to 10. Then for your other color, it would go down from 10 to 1. So let's see, let me draw, let's try that. So we'll draw 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Is that going to be tall enough? Okay, good. And then that would mean that it would go from 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Okay, so now if you wanted to add all these up, let's see, so 11 times 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 11 times 10 is 110, so that means we have 110 rows here. So this would be the way to do that gradient color work if you were going to do 110 rows. Let's see, what would be a normal gauge for, let's say we did rows of double crochet. Let's say it would be 2 rows to the inch, 2 rows to the inch. So 110 divided by 2 would be, what would that be, 55 inches? So if you wanted to do a 55-inch scarf, you could do, a 55-inch scarf if your gauge was 2 rows of double crochet to the inch. Then you would do 1 row of color A, 10 rows of color B. 2 rows of color A, 9 rows of color B. 3 rows of color A, 8 rows of color B. Does that make sense now? This is a little mathy. But I thought that this was a really awesome way for you to, let's say you just pick 2 colors that you love. And you're like, I don't know what to do with it, but I sure love the way gradients look. And imagine if you took 2 variegated colors that had some similarity in them. You could do this. Or you did 1 variegated and 1 solid color. There are a gazillion ways you can make your own gradient by doing this. And the more rows you did of either one so that it would gradually move, the more dramatic it would be. If you did it in single crochet, it would be more dramatic even than in double crochet because you can't see it, it's too far away. If you watch the playback, you could probably pause this. That might help too. Was that better? You see a little better now? I'll wait and see if anybody has any other questions about it. Right, so if you you could do this for a blanket too. Doesn't matter what two-dimensional fabric you do. You could do a rectangular scarf, you could do a blanket, you could do a scarf, but you would want, the more rows you do, the more dramatic the gradient looks, and the smaller the stripes start and end, the more dramatic it would look. So doing this in single crochet would be more dramatic than double crochet. And if you did it in treble crochet, it would be less dramatic because the smallest stripe would still be taller. But if you're doing an Afghan, then it depends on the scale of your project. So in a scarf, what would you choose next to each other in the color wheel for maximum effect? For maximum effect, I would probably use opposite colors on the color wheel. This would be most dramatic in black and white. This would be most dramatic in opposite colors. So purple and gold are opposite on the color wheel. What else is opposite on the color wheel? I know purple and yellow are. So if you were going to use complementary colors, yeah, it would just be a totally different look. But the question was that it was what would be the most dramatic. Most dramatic would be contrast colors, in my opinion. But either way, it would be beautiful. I don't think there's a wrong way to do it. It's going to be a subtle difference. And the more rows you can do of it, the more contrast you can go from skinny to fat stripes. And would the repeat be 10 rows? No, there is no repeat. You're doing, I just happened to do it going from 1 to 10 this direction and going from 1 to 10 this direction, meaning going from 1 row to 10 rows. And that ended up coming up to 110 rows. But let's say you were going to do, let's say that 110 rows wasn't long enough for you. Based on your gauge, that wasn't long enough for a scarf, or it wasn't long enough for an Afghan. You may need to go more than 10. It's because it's not about the repeat here. Here it's about how many sets of increasing stripes in one color are you going to inverse with the decreasing of those same number of stripes in the opposite direction. That's why I did this in the two different colors. Notice the red goes from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. The black goes 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So it doesn't matter how many, it just needs to be the same. So if you were going to do 15, then you would, in the one color, you'd increase the number of rows from 1 to 15, and then you would decrease from 15 all the way down to 1. So it involves writing it down a little if you're going to do this without a pattern. And I haven't gotten around to making a pattern for this. On this particular one, it's going to be even on row 6. Yes, row 6 there, because we did, row 6 is going to be even right here. That's correct. But it all depends on how many rows you end up choosing to do. This one I'm choosing to do a sequence of increasing 1 to 10 rows per color. One goes increasing and one goes decreasing. Yeah, Pamela, it's a fun exercise for your brain. Sit down with a pencil and a piece of paper. Figure out what your gauge is. Figure out if you're going to do single crochet or double crochet or treble crochet. It doesn't have to be a stitch pattern. It can just be plain stitches. Figure out what your gauge is, specifically your row gauge for this portion of it. However wide you wanted your piece to do, you would do it in, you would want to know your stitch gauge as well. So like for a scarf, you may want this 7 inches wide. So figuring out what your gauge is, you'll figure out how many stitches you need for each row. You'll need to figure out if you're going to do it in single crochet, double crochet, half double crochet, or whatever, what your row gauge is, how many rows total you want to do. To do this for the 10 stripes of each color, it came out to 110, what was it, 110 rows? Yeah, so just for comparison, let's draw this again for 12. So I'll draw 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And there's fancy math formulas for figuring this out, but I know we don't want to go there tonight, so I'm going to show you how to do this manually. And then we'll go 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so now we've got 12 plus 1 is 13, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. We got 12 sets of 13. We've got 156 rows. So for that one, we'd have 156 rows. And if that works for your gauge to make the right size, then that might be the case. And you might have to do some trial and error on paper to see how many sets of stripes will work for your project. If you're doing this in single crochet, obviously your row gauge is going to be much more dense than if you're doing a taller stitch, and you'll need more stitches. So let's do one more. Why not? So, okay, somebody pick a number larger than 12 that's reasonable for me to do on the paper here, and I'll do one more set. Yeah, sometimes it's seeing multiple samples, right, Pamela? Joe says 15. All right, so we'll do 15. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. I may go off the paper a little bit. Sorry about that. And then we'll start the other one in the opposite direction. So we'll go 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Okay? So an easy way that I count this type of stuff, and like I said, I know there's a formula, but I think that's more complicated and unnecessary for what we're doing tonight. So we've got 16 times 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. 16 times 15. We've got 240. Okay, so to give you some, baselines, if we're doing the 10 stripes of each color, it ends up being 110 rows. If we're doing 12 stripes of each color, it's 156 rows. And if we're doing 15 stripes of each color, one increasing, one decreasing, it ends up being 240 rows. And those will give you a baseline for, based on your gauge, where you think you are for how many rows you'll need. And you may need to sit down with a piece of paper and pencil and work this out for 25 or 30 or whatever, depending on if you're making something really large or something in a fine gauge. But I think that you can really get a good head start just from seeing this, so that if you wanted to try some sort of a gradient stripe in any kind of a stitch, I think you could really get started from this. Jill can't think this deep this time of night. Well, Jill, you could always watch the video again tomorrow, because I really think that you could benefit from it if, we all have to be in the right frame of mind to learn anything. And if you're not, it's really great that you're being honest with yourself, because knowing you're not in the right frame of mind for something and not forcing yourself into it is really half the battle, in my opinion. I talk to Marlon about this all the time. If your brain isn't open to learning this thing right now, take a break, right? You don't think it's the right time of night for you? Great. Look at it another night. Look at it another day. Look at it when you're fresh. What do I mean by decreasing in this design? I mean by decreasing the number of rows in the stripes. So the red stripe is increasing by one row in each one in this direction, increasing by one row, and the black stripe is decreasing by one row in each stripe. And we chose the same number of stripes for each color, so that each one starts at 12, but one's increasing and one's decreasing. So the fattest stripe of A is here, and the fattest stripe of B is here, and they as they cross each other, one is skinny in the beginning and skinny at the end. So in order to do that, we start at the top. We're going to have our smallest stripe of one color and our largest stripe of the other color. And as we increase in size of stripe in one color as we go, we're decreasing in the other stripe. And so it's really helpful to have this written out next to you. This is just conceptual. It's not about a pattern. Yes, Janet, it would be exquisite in variegated yarns too. Absolutely. Or combining variegated with solid as well. You could do it in more than two colors. We're just going over a two-color version right now. But yeah, you could do this in all sorts of ways. My drawing's hideous. I don't care. Had to start somewhere. Lisa just did a project with multicolor rows. That's great. You know what would be another fun thing to do here one day is talk about the different ways of carrying up a color if you don't want to cut your yarn between rows. Sometimes I think it's okay to cut yarn between stripes. Oh, thanks, Janet. I hope that I demystified this a little bit. I hope it looks fairly simple. And once you can get to the point of writing down your plan like this, then it's super easy to do, because then you're crocheting and you go, this works for knitting too. Exactly the same concept whether you're knitting or crochet, exactly the same. But so if once you get to the point of writing this part down, then it's super simple. You're just knitting or crocheting along. Okay, this color I'm doing 1 row, this color I'm doing 15, this color I'm doing 2, this color I'm doing 14. And what I would do at that point is, as you could either go done, done, I did 2 rows in this color, done, did 14 rows in this color, done. You know why it's good to check them off, right? So that if you get up, do something else, take a couple days off, and you come back, you know exactly where you left off. You could cross them off, you could draw check marks next to them, do all sorts of things. If you don't want to mess up your paper, do I have one with me? It's in my other room. If you don't want to mess up your paper, another fabulous way to mark where you're at is to take a sticky note and just cover up or put it right where you're at. I saw someone ask, would this work with working in the round? Absolutely. Absolutely, this would work for knitting or crocheting in the yarn. Jill, it depends on the length of your stitches. I think sometimes I don't have a problem at all with cutting. I think cutting sometimes ends up being easier, and especially if you're comfortable and confident in your skills for weaving in loose ends, it's really no big deal at all to weave in loose ends, especially when you're going from, this is 1 row, you're doing 1 row and then 12 rows in the other color. It would be kind of a waste to see where you've carried up the yarn on the other one. Sometimes I think it's okay to cut the yarn. If you're doing 1 row or 2 rows of each color, then it would be a waste. But when you're doing larger rows, I think the most sensible thing to do is to cut the yarn in between. But that's my opinion. And I'm comfortable weaving in loose ends. Lots of great questions. Anybody else have questions tonight? I know, Pamela, get out your color wheel. The possibilities are absolutely endless. Just go through your yarn stash, or what are 2 colors that you're just dying to buy and you don't know why and you can't figure out why. And what am I going to do with these 2 different colors? Make a gradient. There's no wrong way to do it. Pick 2 colors you like and just go to town. Yeah, Jill, it's important to keep track of where you are in a pattern, right? Barbara, do I have a rule of thumb for carrying versus cutting? Does this go with any gauge, Healing Springs? Any gauge, knitting, crochet, doesn't matter. Rule of thumb for me with cutting yarn versus carrying yarn depends on the stitch pattern. Sometimes a stitch pattern lends itself pretty well for pulling the yarn up, and sometimes it doesn't. Working in the round, especially when you're not going to see the inside, I would definitely carry my yarn up. Probably would for any number of rows, because if you're not going to see the back side and you're working in the round, you can twist the two yarns after every round and it works beautifully. When you're working in rows, I feel like you can see it. So if even on the longer sequences of rows, I would consider carrying it up. If there's going to be a row or a round of edging where you're going to single crochet along that edge, or knitting, doing whatever, if you're going to do some sort of an edging and you can cover it up, then I would still carry it up, because even though you see it, you won't end up seeing it once you put an edging on there. But if you're not going to put an edging on and you're doing taller rows and it's contrast yarns where you're really going to see those carries, I would probably cut the yarn for 3 row stripes. That's where I would make my cutoff. You're welcome, Barbara. Well, we are out of time, but thank you all so much for taking time out of your busy evening to spend a few minutes here with me. I hope you enjoyed the tutorial. And if you have any questions, please feel welcome to leave them for me in the comments. Let us make time to create, share, and inspire today and every day. I'll see you all tomorrow. Bye.